Ben, welcome back to the Way Champions podcast. It's been far too long, my friend. So good to see your face again.
I thought you ghosted me, but now we get a second date and I'm pumped.
Yeah. Well, we've done some good work together recently, good conversations, and we'll get into the stuff that you invited me to do with you and Soldiers to Sidelines and everything. But yeah, and Jerry wanted to join us this go around as well. He listened to our first conversation and said that's a guy that I want to talk to. So Jerry, welcome as well.
Oh my gosh, what an honor for me today. This is so exciting. Can't wait.
Ben, why don't we just start with, the first time we had you on, I remember I called you a psychologist and you corrected me because you're like, I don't have my PhD yet, but you do now. So here we go, sports psychologist,
Dr. Ben.
Dr. Ben. And I remember it was such an interesting topic for your research and everything. Can you tell people about doing your PhD and what that was on?
Well, John, you're going to be even more mad at me this time.
Oh boy.
Still not a sports psychologist. Um, I am Dr. Ben. Jerry is right on that. I did my Doctor of Education in Sport and Performance Psychology. So um, I do not refer to myself as a sports psychologist. I do have a master's in clinical mental health counseling, but in terms of going the full psychologist route, I didn't. And I have stayed on the track. I have obtained my doctorate of education in sport and performance psychology, and really the purpose and passion has been to stay on the applied route.
Mhm.
I'm still really thankful that a couple times a month I still put cleats on and still get to go out onto the field and be in the environment. Um, a lot of one-on-one work with athletes that is probably similar to what psychologists do is definitely in my realm. But calling myself, let's say the appropriate title is certified mental performance coach through
Mhm.
Association for Applied Sports Psychology. And, I would say the bulk of what I'm doing right now is working one-on-one with athletes, or like you and Jerry, working in the team environment to see how we can just maximize effectiveness.
And you've had such an interesting, for anyone who hasn't listened to our first interview with Ben, you and I met doing, I think, our USSFB license together, many, many moons ago. I mean, 20 years ago. And you were a Division I NCAA soccer head coach, and you've coached at all levels. What made you go down this realm of maybe getting out of full-time coaching into the psychology and the mental performance side of things?
You're making me revisit a painful but pivotal memory. And it starts like
Oh
this.
boy.
So there I was, so
Mhm.
there I was. The year was, I think, 2007, 2008. And I've thought about this a lot, John. It was a couple of things, but I think this moment that I'm going to share was pivotal. I was coaching at Virginia Military Institute. We'd never beaten Coastal Carolina. And I remember telling every recruit, one thing you'll do when you come to VMI is you'll be able to say you beat Coastal or
Mhm.
rival. And man, I wanted to deliver on that promise so bad for the guys that I was fortunate enough to coach. And this week in particular, I mean, I was feeling it. I
Yeah.
felt we were so prepared. I felt the team really was up for it. And we were winning pretty deep into the second half, up 2-0. And that game ended 6 yellow cards, 2 red cards, losing 3-2.
Mhm.
And I remember, I think back to that day, and if I could like zoom out and see myself, you saw a very dysregulated individual,
Mhm.
somebody who really could not, whatever you want to call it, self-regulation, self-manage, composure, poise, whatever it was. And when a team needed to look over to their coach and see stability or maybe some nonverbals of we're right where they need to be, they saw a lunatic on the sidelines.
Mm.
That moment, in addition to go back to where you and I first met, John, and at a lot of these soccer specific, whether it be United States Soccer Federation, United Soccer Coaches, those organizations, which I'm a part of now, at the time, in my opinion, were over promising and under delivering on the psychological side of the game. And I think, that moment back to that VMI defeat against Coastal, coupled with the hunger I had when I would go to those courses for understanding the psychological side of the game, that's what pushed me back to going full time into this, from initially a master's and then ultimately my doctoral work in sport and performance psych. And I now my thought is this: the coach is already the team psychologist, and I'd love to make him a good one.
Yeah, exactly. And before we bring Jerry in here, I think just to sort of flesh out the rest of your background, you went from there. You worked with special forces troops on the mental performance side. You worked with the Toronto Blue Jays of Major League Baseball, head of mental performance, yeah, I mean, you've sort of, there's one thing about mental performance, whether I strike out or not. And there's another thing of, mental performance when someone's shooting at me. And so you've sort of seen like, adversity with real consequences and adversity with sort of sometimes imagined consequences, right?
Yeah, both. I would say both those environments. First of all, am extremely grateful for those organizations trusting me with their most valuable resources, which is their people. And I would certainly say I learned a great deal from both. I mean, first, from the Army Rangers, bloody practice for a bloodless war. Coaches and people talk about make training tough. Now where they got those ideas from. I mean, I watched those guys put themselves in some really, really tough environments on purpose. Why? So that when they go in and do the real thing, they can trust in their training. I don't know if there's a greater source of confidence in something, knowing that you have, fully prepared from every aspect possible. But then the similarity, John, between the two is, for those baseball guys, it is life and death. I mean, those guys, some of them in particular, there is no plan B. Baseball really needs to work out. It really, really needs to work out. So even though you cannot compare the two environments, the similarity is that to the Rangers and to the Blue Jays, what they're doing is extremely important, and they want to do it well. And therefore, they're not going to leave anything up to chance. If mental skills training gives them a competitive advantage, they're going to take it.
Jerry, you sort of were at the forefront, decades ago, talking about this stuff and saying, your first book, Thinking Body, Dancing Mind, and everything, was really all around, right? Like, hey, this mental performance stuff it's not just a nice to have, it's a must have. And I still think decades later, we're still not all the way there. Like Ben just said, if this can give me an advantage, I'm going to take advantage of it. Yet there's still many people in professional sports, collegiate sports, whatever, that don't think about this side of things, do they, Jerry?
No, it's very true. And especially outside this country too. A lot of European countries, a lot of teams over in Europe and Southeast Asia, they still have that image of psychology as something's wrong with me, and why do I have to see Jerry? Why do I have to see Ben? Because I'm fine. And when I started out decades ago, you want to tell me how many years? 45 years ago? I wasn't the only one around, but I'll tell you, it was a hard sell. If I went into the Toronto Blue Jays and said to them, I can help your team. I'm a sports psychologist. They would have laughed me out. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen, right? Uh, Forget about teaching meditation and visualization. I mean, that's like too woo woo. And who's this stranger from California? What is he trying to do? So I'm here to say this: it has massively changed, but it's still not there. I mean, the massive changes. I mean, I never have to sell what I do. People are craving what I do, and Ben, I know they're craving what you're doing, and John, you know that from the work that we do together. But there's still those people. They're just stuck in the mud, and they're not ready yet. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and you're nodding yes, and you're smiling, Ben. That's true. That you've been in places, I'm sure, where they don't just buy in. It's like you've got to really convince them. You have to give them convinces. So, we have these magic things where we'll have them hold a ring and let us swing on a pendulum, right? Just by thinking, oh my God, I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening to you. So it still requires quite a sales pitch in many ways. But
Well,
John, go
can
ahead.
I
Yeah.
like Ben, I'll throw this to you. Like, can you convince someone that they need this, or do you just kind of try to hold a mirror up to someone and then say, "Well, how's it working for you?" you know, because it's hard to
Yeah.
convince someone. Yeah, go ahead.
I just first I'm just taking in everything Jerry said and can only imagine uh what it was like, when it felt like selling, because um I mean, this stuff is just backed up in terms of the evidence that the impact that it can have. No, you can't convince people. To Jerry's point, uh, not only is it true, when the student's ready, teacher will appear, but people have to want to be coached. John, that's where I think you and I connect so much about coaching behaviors, and the behaviors that coaches demonstrate would facilitate the athlete or the individual, whoever's appetite to want to be coached, to get them to lean in. Also, on the sellability of this, I think, from what I've learned about psychology in particular with motivational interviewing, that the harder you convince somebody they need something, the more reasons they will come up with that they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so to that end, I say skeptics welcome. And I think that really, when this type of work is brought, I think the demeanor that a mental performance coach, a sports psychologist, whatever, I think that they have, when they hold it lightly, when they understand that they don't need to be used all the time, in order to validate their worth. I think that over time people start to warm up to that. You kind of got to pick your spots. I think early on I learned some really hard lessons. That I'm sports psych. I'm working in this environment. They need me. I need to go show what I can do. I learned a painful way that's not the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
already in. I'm all in with you. I mean, you can coach me,
Mm-hmm.
just listening to you. And the reason I make that point is because I never felt I was selling psychology. I was being me, and people bought me, Jerry. And regardless of what I said, they really cared about who I was. And from that point, they started listening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said to you, I'm all in. I mean, I'm listening to you talk. Your willingness to be open, genuine, authentic, vulnerable. Do I need to go on? I mean, you emanate those qualities. And regardless of what you call yourself, it doesn't matter. I am a person who can relate to the way you're being. And so I'm going to listen to you. And what you say is going to make sense to me. Why? Because I'm already bought into the person. And that's what great coaching is, isn't it? Isn't it about like establishing that relationship game? And once you have the relationship game, they'll freaking go down on the pitch and bite the grass so it's the right length and everything else? Yeah, you're agreeing with me.
John,
Disagree with me.
John, I don't know why I didn't get to meet Jerry way sooner. Like, of course,
Wow.
I'm agreeing with you. You know, for me, Jerry, I think, you know, pain has been my teacher in a lot of these things. I think, you know, really, I forget where I heard it. The illiterate of the 21st century is not those who can't read and write. It's those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. A lot of my growth that's getting you to agree with me is because I just had to unlearn, you know, more directive, uh, autocratic approaches. And in that way, like this journey of sports psych, and going into some of these elite environments, uh, has just been so eye-opening for me to really understand that just because you may know some things or have some education on things, the real skill is resisting that urge to reflexively add value. And like you said, just be you, just be you. And then in the moments, you're going to have your opportunities to work. It's not going to be in 30-minute didactic presentations with a PowerPoint. It's going to be 5 minutes as a guy's taking his boots off, you know, and maybe you notice something, you know, from a training session, you know, 90 minutes earlier, you know, or it's circling back because, you know, you had a conversation in preseason about goals. And then there's a moment in the locker room at halftime where you remind a player about something that's meaningful to them, not meaningful to you, but meaningful to them. So this work, I mean,
but you can't fake that. You know, you have to.
It's so nuanced.
You have to. It's nuanced, and you've got to feel it genuinely. And that's why I'm saying I can feel the genuine. How long have we talked together? I can feel it almost instantly how genuine you are and vulnerable and open to taking responsibility for what you don't know, and almost like putting yourself down in a way, you know. But having said that, the idea of you walking into a room for the purpose of caring about somebody, you're going to remember that's important. And you'll come back to that. But if you're so concerned about, oh my God, I got this whole list of things I've got to teach, you know, the psychology, you know, this is what I learned in my doctoral program. And I got this, this, and this, and this. And come on, guys, we got to get to this part, you know. It's just like you walk in and you're being a human being. And that's what people relate to. And that's when they're going to be open and their hearts you'll captivate their hearts, you win their hearts, and that's when they'll go the distance for you.
Ben, Jerry has a great line, and maybe he stole it, but I heard it first for him. So at least for the next 40 minutes, we'll give him credit for this line.
I'll tell you if it's not me.
And he said, fear is the cancer of the athletic soul. And that is a Jerryism. Okay.
I think I did. Yeah. I never read that anyplace.
So I want to talk about this, right? Ben, like fear. I see fear is so pervasive in today's youth athlete, in the college athlete, and the things they're afraid of can be different, right? From, you know, at the professional level, what is Twitter going to think of me? Right? What's going to be, right? Someone just dunked in my face. I hope it's not on the ESPN top 10, right? To the young child afraid of letting down their coach or their parents or their teammates. Talk about fear and how you see fear in the realm of athletics and what we can do maybe as coaches to help combat it.
Yep. Here comes some rambling.
Yeah.
I love that you just said that. God.
Well, I was working with a college golf program last week, John, and I asked the coach. I said, "Hey, while I'm there, I want a one-on-one with every dude who wants a one-on-one." And how many signed up for a one-on-one? You think?
I mean, 0, 1?
All of them.
Oh, all did. Oh, well, that's good.
All of them.
Because a lot of times they're all scared, but they won't because I don't want to be seen doing it. So that's a good sign, at least.
I think it's more aligned with what Jerry said earlier, that we still have a long way to go, but we are doing so much of a better job of normalizing that this work is not always from a place of deficit. And but in this case, the players were extremely hungry for it. And if I were to categorize most of the conversations, it'd be around fear. And if I were to go further, I'm thinking of, I think it was maybe Seneca, who said, we are often more frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And a lot of times it is our self-limiting beliefs. It's our internal dialogue. It is our mind that's being a DeLorean, loving to just go back to the past or off into the future, convincing ourselves that we are going to screw it up, that it's going to go horribly. And I've got these golfers telling me, Ben, I'm 6 holes in, I'm 9 holes in, and I am on my game.
Yeah.
And I say to myself, oh wait, I'm on my game. What if I can't keep it up? What if I, and it's almost the moment they have this awareness, they go from, and this is something that when I listen to athletes talk, I'm trying to assess, they go from the motivation to achieve success, goal oriented, task focused, to the motivation to avoid failure. You see it, John. I mean, from a soccer perspective, how many games have you coached where you're up 1-0 and those last 10 minutes feel like 90?
Right. And in the first 80, when you were playing to win,
exactly,
free, creative, dominating, and all of a sudden we're playing not to lose, and and it just all falls apart. And again, you see this with Manchester City. I mean, you see it with the best athletes in the world. You see it with the Golden State Warriors. Like, this shift happens, and it's incredible to watch.
And so you asked, what can we do as coaches? One of my favorite interventions is going over non-negotiables with athletes. John, tell me, John, you're a 6, or John, you're a forward, or John, you're a linebacker. What is one thing that your team can count on you to do? And usually you want to guide that athlete toward a physical task that they can execute. And then I like to ask questions. Can you do that when you're winning? Oh yeah, Ben, I can do that when I'm winning. Can you do that when you're losing? Yeah, I can do that when I'm losing. Can you do that no matter what? Yes, I can do that no matter what. And I had a Division I soccer player that I worked with throughout the season this year, that John, his coach, reached out to me because at times this player, after a couple of mistakes, was asking to come out of the game. I mean, and like my heart goes out to this kid so much, that all those things that you said, fear about losing future opportunities or what teammates would say, social media would say, those were all real to him. So much so that his attention had completely gone off of being task relevant and performing in the moment. And it was to all those external fears. And so that's what our intervention was.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was week after week after week of getting him to verbalize, hey, what are you going to do when your team has the ball? What are you going to do when they don't have the ball? Can you do that when you're winning? Can you do that? And it became a pattern. And I think that's one of the things you said, well, what can we help coaches with? These interventions don't have to be turning the lights off and, sitting for 45 minutes, doing visualization sessions. They can be, but these can also be 5 minutes before training, asking athletes to think of 1 or 2 things that they want to be intentional with. I think coaches can really help athletes, when they get to training, ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how present are you right now for this session? And hey, take 60 seconds and then do whatever you need to get even more present and grounded with what we're about to do. From a soccer specific standpoint, John, just because I know that's, an area you and I tend to gravitate toward, I believe not all stoppages are created equal. And I love to work with athletes on how they can identify a stoppage in the game and use it from a mental skills standpoint to take a breath, to recommit to their role, to recognize if their mind is 20 minutes from now when they're worried about winning or losing, or if it's right in this moment. I'm going to get the ball and change the point of attack. I'm going to get the ball and play that penetrating pass. Mm-hmm. This player's about to get the ball, so I'm going to go and press. Those types of things pay us back. And that's what we used to say to Blue Jays guys all the time. Pay attention to what pays you back.
Love that. Love that quote right there. So good. Jerry, anything to piggyback on that?
That's a great title for a book. I'm writing this down.
But Ben, is that your book, man?
I'm not going to take it though. You're going to write it.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So fear, right? That's a pet peeve of mine. A pet peeve in the sense that most people are not willing to admit that they're afraid, and in order to deal with fear, you have to admit that you're afraid. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like a teaching opportunity, right? What is the fear teaching you? And so, yeah, there's a lot to be afraid of: letting your friends down, letting your team down, not getting enough playing minutes, fear of outcomes, results, things you cannot control. So fear is one of those things that will happen to all of us. I saw some client the other day, and in the first 10 minutes was discussing, I was afraid to see you. I said, well, I won't eat you or anything, I'm not that way. And there's no, I just afraid, I'm afraid how you're going to think about me and what have you. And I said, well, let me start by telling you about me. And I started to tear myself down with truth, like how many times my bestseller career launching book got refused for publication, and how I suffered through that, and how I learned from that, and how I was afraid I was never going to be able to get it published, and what that would mean. And I came up with this idea a while ago that so here's my response to this whole topic of fear is I see life as two separate realities. One is people who live in fear and people who live in love. You cannot live in love simultaneously and still be fearful. You cannot be fearful and be loving. And so fear is usually about yourself, and love is usually about other people. Fear is usually about what's going on in your head. Love is about what's going on in your heart. Fear is about getting. I want to get more playing time. I'm afraid I'm not. Love is about giving. What can I give here? How can I help my team in this stoppage time? So I've really simplified it for myself, because if things are simple for me, I tend to understand things better. And so the simplicity is, you look at any team that you work with, there's either going to be a lot of fear in that locker room or a lot of love. If there's fear, then what we have to do is, it is a cancer of the soul, because fear will kill every opportunity that you have. You won't be able to see it. You'll be blinded. So to me, I came up with the cure. And the cure of fear is love. In environments where there's love, and by love, I mean caring, connection, but mostly giving.
And respect and acceptance and
all of that. It's all about love. Exactly. And so it's all about this idea of giving or getting. What do you want to do? Give or get? And one can't exist without the other. It's impossible to have both. So the work is, when athletes hear this, they want to say, well, how can we get rid of the fear? I say, you don't get rid of the fear. What you do is you increase the probability that this is going to be a caring, loving, respectful, compassionate environment. And what I notice about all championship level teams, and I've had some experience with those, is that they have this propensity to love deeply. And, that's my observation with all this stuff.
Ben, do you get, like Jerry and I get coaches who will contact us about working with their teams, and they'll say, you know, can you fix these people? Can you make them mentally tough? Right. And we always go back to, where you creating an environment that allows for people to be mentally tough. And so sort of a two-part question for you is, you know, number one, to kind of sum up this part on fear, I mean, fear is sort of the terms and conditions you signed up for when you decided to play a sport, and there's uncertainty and there's growth and all that. There's going to be fear, right? Like, I'm a college golfer and I have a 5-foot putt on the 18th hole to win the match. I signed up for that. I shouldn't be afraid of that moment. Like, that's the terms and conditions of being a college golfer. So it's okay for my heart rate to go up. It's okay for my mouth to be dry. It's okay for my palms to be sweaty. That's not something wrong with me. That means that I care, right? So maybe you can finish with that, and then we can move into what is your response to the coach who says, fix that, make that go away?
Yeah, thanks. Just double tapping what Jerry said. If we could make fear go away, we would. That's a book everybody would read, Jerry. I'm with you. I'm with you. We normalize it. We're not here to waste time on how to make fear go away. You know what that's called? That's called avoidance. That's how people develop addiction. They go to great lengths to avoid feeling certain things, right? Here's what I learned from the Army Rangers. One of the best lessons. First stanza of the Ranger Creed: recognizing that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. You want to be an athlete? You want to be an elite athlete? The hazards of the chosen profession are: you may lose, you may get cut, you may get traded, you may miss the putt, you may not start, you may not get picked up. If you can, and this is where I think the role, you know, when we talk about fear, and Jerry, what you touched on, the relationship between fear and acceptance. In order for me to really go for it, sometimes my body and mind are going to send me signals that may suggest I'm not ready. However, with mental skills training, having pre-game routines, in-game routines, when the body and mind try and signal or convince us that we're not worthy or we're not ready, we have the strategies to overcome those.
Mm-hmm. So what do you say to, oh, go ahead, Jerry.
And I want to, people are saying, well, why I sign up for fear? Yes, but that doesn't mean you have to live with it. And it's going to come at you. And so the fear is, the fear is telling you that you need to pay attention to something. What do I need to pay attention to? Guess why I'm afraid? I'm afraid I'm going to lose something. Lose the game, lose the match. I'm afraid of this. So therefore, what do I do about that? I need to understand that I'm trying to control something I cannot. So let's go back and focus on what I can control. I can control my first touch. I can control my attitude when I make a mistake. I can control my effort on the pitch. I can be the hardest working back on the pitch. I can control all these things. And once I start doing that, it gets back to I'm giving and not getting. So that's, to me, such an important component between the controllables and those things that we cannot control. Because I'm afraid, the things that I'm afraid of are things usually that I cannot control. So we have to come back to doing that. And I think that really helps me to get through a lot of the fear that I experience. Do you feel that way as well, Ben?
That and just the power, the power that our breath has to anchor us to the present moment. Mm-hmm. I think, what's good for the body is good for the mind. And I wish I would have spent more time. So many of the things that I believe in now, it's probably like all of us. You wish you could go back and urge your younger self to take on, going back to that day where VMI lost to Coastal. Mm-hmm. What would my team have seen with me if before that game or at halftime, I was just tapping into my breath and really slowing myself down in the moment before that putt, before the pitcher pitches, before the batter steps into the batter's box, before guys step off of a helicopter. Just our breath is our anchor to the present moment. And I think between getting into the present moment, accepting where fear plays a role, and knowing how to be task relevant in our attention, those kind of co-occurring processes, I think can really have a competitive advantage that we've talked about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
but I'm sorry,
there's
John.
I was just going to say, and Jerry, you can hop on. I mean, to quote another ancient philosopher, since we're doing that here, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but I just saw this quote the other day. It says, if you're living in the past, you have depression, right? If you're living in the future, you have anxiety, and if you're in the present, you have peace, right? And being present and task oriented, that's peace. And our anxiety, our depression, anything, not just in sport, but in life, in any difficult situation, when we move forward or we move backward, it's oftentimes an unhealthy emotion and thing that we're feeling. And we all struggle with it, especially, and again, anyone can be great when you're winning 6-0, right? That's easy, right? It's when you're down, it's when the pressure's on, that's when your true personality and your true reactive self comes out, and that's when training matters the most, right? It's easy until they're real bullets. It's easy until it's win or go home. Now it gets hard, and that's our challenge as coaches.
John, I think we talked about it last time. For me, there's no difference between mental or physical skills. They're not skills unless they hold up under pressure.
Yeah.
They're not skills unless they hold up under pressure. I know I said that last time. I
I
was
think it was the title of the podcast last
Yeah,
time because I liked
really.
it so much.
but I have watched it. I've just seen too many athletes or I think coaches or performers as well, that when the game is tight, when things are uncertain, you see whether it be fear, anxiety, when we need narrow focus, it's broad, people getting myopic, people making physical mistakes. It's because there's been no or not enough mental skills preparation. Practicing breathing will pay us back in moments when the heart rate starts to get elevated. Practicing task relevant reminders when the mind is naturally going to be drawn to what if we lose this game and all of those consequences, and to be able in the moment to reference some of the things that Jerry talked about, my controllables, so to speak. Those things are skills that when practiced, and this is the stuff that I think coaches can bake into the training environment more. What are the reminders we need to give ourselves? When are the best moments to go back to our breath? What do we do when muscles feel tight? When we teach some of these skills and help, we say this at the Jays, our philosophy was elite athletes can self-regulate their attention and their emotion under pressure in any circumstance, and that's really, really hard to do. And in any circumstance, may be a bridge too far, but with training, this stuff can hold up. We can't leave it to chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many
John,
thoughts going through my head. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You asked about this. Hey, Ben, fix, one of the
Fix my team. Yeah.
yeah. So, my doctoral dissertation focus was on acceptance commitment training. And, one of the first things I learned there is to treat people as sunsets, not math problems, and you try and solve math problems or solve, teams. And, with that, I'm like, I can't fix your team. And one of the biggest things that I try and look for now before and I'd love to hear your and Jerry's thoughts on this as well before you agree to partner with somebody and take them on as your client, is if they're looking for you to be the one that has the biggest impact on their team dynamics, their team psyche, instead of you being the one that collaborates with the coach, partners with the coach, that there's a big difference there. I've had some big failures where I've maybe been brought in to be that fixer that you referenced, John, and I didn't ask enough good questions early on, as opposed to going into an environment where the coaching staff wants to sit in on everything, participate on everything, has ideas, wants to know how they can keep the conversation going while still being authentic to them. Those are the teams I want to be a part of.
Jerry, I know you have an
Oh
opinion
boy.
on that one.
Oh my God. You were right, John. I need to be on this. This has been very stimulating for me, Ben, and your thought processes are spot on from my brain. Look, when I again, yeah, when I started out, again, selling my stuff was one thing. I mentioned that before, but there was a lot of time when, quote unquote, an opportunity would come my way. Hey, do you want to work with women's volleyball at Maryland? Yeah, sure, I'll take it. And then I get in there, it's a nightmare because they expect me to be fixing all their problems. And all of a sudden, I'm having these therapy sessions with the coach. You know, she's got all these issues about every player, about everything. It was a nightmare. And then as I grew more confident in myself and in the work, I was able to actually state what really is my limitation and what I can and can't do. So at this point, after all these years, I mean, I just will not take anyone unless they pass the litmus test. And the litmus test is understanding I'm not coming in to fix you. This is going to be a collaborative, cooperative adventure between us all. And I'm going to be an observer without answers. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions, which is going to drive you on this quest, quote unquote, of becoming the best version that you can become. So before I even walk in to the environment, they're on that page or they're not. Because if they're not on that page, I'll say, you know what? Maybe you better call Ben. I got this number, and let's call Ben. Just joking. I
So
would never
if
do
you
that
ever
to
get a
you.
referral from
I would
Jerry,
never.
like, don't take the call.
I would never ever do that to my worst enemy. But no, but when you're at this place, you know that your work, and this is a statement you could I would say to them, I know my work and I know how much I can penetrate your hearts and how much good I can bring. I can't bring you outcomes, but the outcomes will definitely reflect the deep work we do. And if this is the route you want to go, I'm your man. If you're looking for answers and a quick fix, there are people out there who really need to make money. I don't. I need to make a difference. And the only way I'm going to make a difference in your life is by focusing in what you're telling me you really need and crave, which is nothing to do with outcomes and results. The outcomes and results will reflect what you're really asking me to do. And it's so important, that point of, otherwise, why God, you can't make anybody happy. Oh boy. Yeah, this is very stimulating.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry, we won't, for confidentiality, mention the team here, but I mean, I was, working closely with you when you went into a very high profile team, and we're having incredible success in revamping the culture, and the team was better than it had been in years. And then the ego of the coach kind of got in the way and all of a sudden forced you back out of the locker room, because all of a sudden it was like, oh, I don't want anyone else to get any credit for our success. And so these are these like constant red flags that we're looking for, because I mean, Ben, you said it, like it's that coach who is spending 95% of the time of the team is going to be far more influential than you in 5%, if that much.
That is it. That is it. And I've been so inspired lately, going back to that golf team that I got to go and work with. The coach and I had a couple car rides together, and he turned to me in one of the car rides and said, "Hey, you're doing a lot of work with the guys, and everything is around how we can get better. What do I need to be doing?
Yeah.
And I mean, when I hear something like that, I'm just flooded with just hope and optimism, and a reminder that this person is the best person to be leading this program. Just the best person to be leading this program. And so, we mentioned the red flags. How do we look for the green flags? When we're doing a discovery call with the coach, what are the green lights, that would suggest, okay, I want to partner with this person. And to me, those are things, when the coach says, well, how much are we going to be involved? To me, that's an indicator. That's a green light that they want to be involved. During the visit, we're working with the team, the coach asking, open-ended, how do we do more of this, or showing curiosity with the coach. That's a green light, as opposed to gatekeepers, stakeholders defending what they're already doing. Those are kind of some of the subtle things that I'm really paying attention to. And I had, this golf coach call me yesterday, right before they were about to go into a team lifting session. And he was like, hey, what were, again, some of those words or reminders that you were giving the guys? And I had a friend tell me one time, and this really stuck with me, he brought me in to work with his team, and he said, Ben, after hearing you, I really feel like it's your job to start conversations, and it's my job to continue those conversations. And I thought, man, that's a really cool way to look at this.
That's really cool.
We collaborate on the right messaging. And then when it is aligned with the coach, their values, their philosophy, they are a lot more likely to revisit and remind and refocus the team on some of the principles that we talk about.
Yeah. And when I work with a coach and I'm going to send the team an email before a big game, or we're going to do a Zoom session, or I'm coming in for a visit, that's always my thing. What are the things that you need me, right, to do it? This is a collaboration, right? And as we all know, the power of the outside voice sometime is just the coach can say it over and over, and someone else comes in and says it in a slightly different way, and now it clicks, and now it resonates. And so, I usually now with these teams, I'll have, sort of a, just a text string with the coaching staff, and, or a WhatsApp with the team leadership of like, what do we need to hear? What are the messages? What can I help with? Right? What's a difficult conversation? Who's doing well? Who needs a word of encouragement? Who needs a difficult conversation that maybe I can have? And this collaboration is really what brings the growth and development of the group. Not my ideas, not just the coach's ideas, not, defending my territory. It's all of us working together. And I've seen college coaches get their legs cut out from under them by a school psychologist, right? And, and just destroy a team dynamic. And it's a scary thing. Like we are on the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, sports psychology, again, I'm going to share my experience after 45 years. It's really hard to defend a lot of people in our profession. I find that there's a lot of charlatans out there. I'm going to say it. A lot of people out there pretending, they can fix you. They can take care of things. They can promise this. They can promise that. And what happens is sports psychology gets a bad rap. And it's really difficult to see that. I like the approach myself of being very curious. I like that word curious because it keeps me from judging, and it keeps me from trying to come up with the answer, which there isn't one. And so my approach is with a lot of coaches is just saying to them, I'm really curious. I like what I see, what you're doing there. Have you ever thought of this? Is this something that's, come through you? And see what their response is. Just that. And if they really give me the nonverbal cues and the verbal cues that, no, this is not something, then it gives me a lot of information too. So I like to collect data and information from coaches at different points in working with them, and stay. If I stay curious and I keep that word in a mindful way, I tend to avoid conversations that become me versus them, or I've got the answers and you don't, or you think you have the answers and I don't, or whatever. And so anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Couldn't agree. Couldn't agree more. I know I've already said it once, but I will double down. Um, Leading with content is all about what you know. Leading with curiosity is all about what they know. And staying curious, to me, is the way. I'm all in and completely sold out on John. I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but just the role that or the effectiveness of motivational interviewing,
Yeah.
which
You introduced me to that. And then I had Stephen Rolnick on the podcast,
yeah,
which was super
so
cool. And
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. I
Do you
mean,
want to just give what the 30,000 foot overview of what that
well,
is?
first, like Dr. Rolnick is just a gem. Like we need him and his ideas just penetrating all of the sport, in particular the youth sport environment. And MI is treating somebody as the expert on their own life. And by staying curious, we evoke wisdom from within. We evoke the motivation to sustain or make a change. And MI involves, you want the 30,000 foot view, because I think people get confused on this. MI is just not the skills, it also involves a spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just the skills, it's a parlor trick. It's
Mm-hmm.
just nifty little approaches to set people up to talk. The spirit of MI involves partnership, like Jerry talked about, and collaboration. It involves compassion. It involves empathy. We are. I mean, we have to keep, as sports psych folks, a lot of apps open, so to speak. The empathy
Mm-hmm.
app open, compassion app open, um, compassion, and also able to keep the open-ended questions, the looking for strengths in this individual, the ability to summarize and reflect. And so, MI is really setting people up to talk about their own life. And why is that hard for coaches? Because, and I've been a coach, so I'll go ahead and say it. Coaches like to be in control. We like to dominate the conversation. We like to drive. And when we
Bingo.
shoot that shift and say, no, it's John's life, I'm going to
Bingo.
find out what's important to John. That could be new territory for coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So I empathize with that. I don't know if 25-year-old Freakley would have been ready for MI. Did I need it? Bet your butt I did, but I
Well,
don't know.
Becky Burley told us on this podcast, legendary NCAA women's soccer coach, and she said, at some point in her career, she started every one-on-one player meeting with, "What's the most important thing we can talk about today?" And she said 80% of them had nothing to do with soccer, right? And that, she felt was like a great key to her success in wins and losses, but in relationships as well. So,
John, I've got one coach that I'm working with right now, and one of the skills that she and I have been practicing is listening statements. This coach had shared with me, and listening statements are an MI term. She had shared with me, this coach, some coaching behaviors, and we had worked on how a listening statement really reflects back what the athlete or the other has told us, which just signals right away, I hear you. And I'm reading a book right now. It's called Never Split the Difference. You guys heard of this book?
no, no.
I think the author's name is Chris Voss, 20-year hostage negotiator.
Mm.
Uh, and the first 50 pages is just basic psychology, how he's talked terrorists and bank robbers out of giving up just by using listening statements and reflecting back in a very calm demeanor. I'm right here with you. I think I have an idea of what you're going through. And, using these skills, they're relevant everywhere. And it all comes from a place, Jerry, you nailed it, from a place of curiosity.
Key word right there. But the listening thing, John and I had a guest on. This is really interesting. Her name was Becky
Betsy Butterick.
Betsy Butterick. Have you heard that name at all? All right, so she comes to us on our podcast. Actually, she was part of our conference that we put on every year. And, I've been in the field of psychology for many years, and I consider myself a fairly good listener. But she changed my life with listening in one simple statement. She said, if you want to be a listener, ask yourself the question as you're in front of the person quietly, what can I learn here? That completely changed everything because I'm in a position, as you are, as John is, any coach is in a position that what we're doing is we're really hearing the person. We're hearing what they're saying. And what are we doing? We're formulating answers, responses. We want to look good. We want to sound good. We want to sound professional. We want to sound right on. We want them to approve of us, right? All that stuff. But if you take the time to just say to yourself, what can I learn here? You might not have anything to say at the end of it. You might just have to digest what you've learned. But that's the key to that person's heart. And so I came up with a thing called love, LUV. So the listening is, what can I learn here? The V is, the U is understand by being curious, asking questions. And the V is to validate when it's appropriate. And when you do that, it's like you don't have to go to graduate school. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have any title. I could be sweeping floors as a profession. And when I do the LUV, people think like I'm the most skilled, almost amazing person they've ever talked with. And so these are the things that I think we all need practice with. And that listening, when you mentioned that, I just practically lost it here. Listening is like one of the most important skills to develop in any kind of leader's skill set. And why? People love to be listened to, not just heard. Yeah.
Ben, I mean, we gave some great tips here, and I just want to bring this back to the coach, the listener, right, who's sitting here going, well, I don't have a degree in psychology. How do I incorporate some of these things into my practice and tools that I've heard from just what we're talking about? How do I listen in those one-on-one meetings? I love this idea of, a scale of 1 to 10, how present are you all for this session right now? Take 60 seconds, right? See if you can make that 5 a 6, right? Like bump it up a bit. And then I like these questions, right? What's a physical task that you can always do, whether we're winning, whether we're losing, that you own or whatever? Any other like last tool, like last little thing that any coach could use when they go out to practice this afternoon after listening to this?
Well, that puts you on the hot seat, doesn't it?
Well, I like it though. It's the questions that make us think are those are the good ones.
Those are the great ones.
John, if the coach has done the work before, and depending on the level of the athlete, other things that we worked hard on with the Blue Jays, and again, this is rooted in acceptance and commitment training, is the power that values have in getting us really aligned or unstuck. So if a coach has the time or willingness to explore with players, not necessarily team values, although those are massively important, but like individual values, right?
What are your non-negotiables as a human being?
Your non-negotiables, right? Our values are our lighthouse in the storm. And so when we have that clarity over our values, or I think it was Roy Disney, I know we're dropping a lot of quotes today, or maybe I am, that said it's not hard to make decisions when we know what our values are.
No, great.
So I think like a quick values check-in, hey, if friendship is a value, how do you bring that into training today? Yeah. If competitiveness is a value, how are you going to bring that into training today? If faith is a value, how are you going to bring that into training today? And just giving players opportunities to connect to this. Or if it's team values, teeing up a player. Hey, John, intensity is one of our team values. When in the last 2 or 3 days have you seen a teammate be intense? And man, a chance to shine a light on a teammate in a positive way. And I've had pro coaches do this. This isn't just fluff for high
Right.
school. I've got a pro coach that I work with right now who is so clear, and the team is so bought in on the values that some sessions start with, hey, what's this value mean to you? Or, hey, when in our last game did one of your teammates show this? And it's just constantly over communicating the values piece. So I think values can be one. I'm always a big fan of giving players an opportunity to recognize what are you bringing with you into the training environment. Going back to the golf team that I worked with, I asked them, hey, what do you need to kind of leave in the trunk of your car? You had to open your trunk to get your clubs. When you got your clubs out, because that's a physical task of what I'm about to do, can you leave something in the trunk? Is it something you need to do for school later, or a grade that you're worried about, or something going on that is not going to serve you out on the course today? I think that's a big one. And I'll have to keep thinking because I'm sure I've
Wow, but I mean, those are great right there. Again,
Yeah.
and there's not a coach listening who's not capable of doing that, right? Of like, hey, what matters most to you? Like, what are your non-negotiables as an athlete or whatever, right? Are you attached to that right now, or are you maximizing that? What can you do to do that, right? And these little moments, right? These aren't 30-minute conversations. These are 3-minute max, right? These are these quick little check-ins, 30 seconds check-in. What are you going to bring today? What are you going to bring today? That just, it's not just quantity of practice, it's quality, right? And yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
And it's not so much what are you going to bring, it's how are you going to demonstrate it. So the question becomes, hey, Ben, I'm curious. I know you like selflessness. How are you going to demonstrate that today? So it gives them a check-in to what the value is that you're thinking of. Let them think about it. Now, this is the behavior I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up all the cones after practice, coach. That's what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, come back to curiosity. I'm very in awe of these concepts. And Ben, I'm blown away by, like I said earlier, you're my coach. I'm there listening and learning, and it's fantastic. Thank you so much for that.
Well, I'm just as grateful, Jerry. I mean, you've said the stuff today that is so bang on that you do not need a degree in psychology to do these things.
Not at all.
And, we could do a whole nother hour on this, but I'm also a dad of 2 sons, and one is, really in sport right now. And like, this is the stuff, just the deep listening, the curiosity, the guiding approach, that I'm sure Dr. Rolnick, talked about. Coaches are so capable. You don't need a degree in psych to do this. You can really practice just some simple listening statements and just cueing to players, and I know that I think the Positive Coaching Alliance is really big on the double goal coach, right? John, not only do I want you to lead us to a championship, but John, I'm all about you. Not when you play well, when we win, but some unconditional positive regard, right? That you don't have to do anything extra today for me to be here for you. You being here today is enough. That keeps kids in sports.
Yeah.
And, I am so, I mean, if you haven't got I don't know if you've heard of Tim Baghurst. Have you heard of Tim? Tim runs the FSU coach program at Florida State. And he would be, I think, a great guest to get on here because I've got a lot of belief that some old school coaching behaviors are being unlearned. They are being replaced with some pro-social connection, cooperative, collaborative approaches that still allow the coach to be in control.
Yeah,
but
and be your authentic self and all these
that's right.
things. Yeah.
Well,
But
you'll have more control, ironically.
you got it.
You know, like
Yeah.
the Buddhists have this wonderful analogy. If you want to control your cows, move the fences back.
Mm.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, what a concept. They won't want to break out. They have plenty of room. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you get more control by letting go of control. And these are things that people are really, like you say, they're really latching onto it. So
Yeah.
I'm real hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
I am
Yeah.
too. When I did my master's thesis, I studied coaches and soccer coaches in particular, Jerry. I asked them, hey, what matters more? Accomplishing tasks and achieving goals, or developing and maintaining strong interpersonal relationships? And the coaches that have been doing it and really successful, they said this. They said, it's been my experience that the harder you work at developing and maintaining strong interpersonal relationships, the more people want to work with you to accomplish tasks and achieve.
Right.
And
Right.
I think, I know in particular, I had it as the inverse.
Yeah.
What John and I met when I was like 24 going for my B license,
Yeah.
and this dude just wanted to win.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we're
Right.
looking for the magic
Yeah.
practice, right? We're
Right.
just missing the magic
Right.
practice.
And
Amen.
you'll appreciate this. So I had a conversation once with Steve a long time ago about the first championship they won in 2015. And I said to him, out of nowhere, I just said, Steve, what was the most important game? And I wanted to know what the most important game was. Like, was it the third game against in the second set against Oklahoma City when you were down 3-1? Was it the finals against Cleveland? And he said, Jerry, that's simple. He said, the most important game I won that year was the relationship game. And that sums it up. That sums up everything you just said. And who's going to argue about Steve Kerr being a quintessential, as we call them now, servant leaders who have the athletes' well-being in mind first? And I just love this conversation. I thank you, John, for
This was
having me on
brilliant.
here.
This was brilliant. Ben, sum up here. How can people get a hold of you, connect with the work that you're doing, all that, and then your final thought, last word for us. But how can they find you?
They can find me my website, rsrcoaching.com. RSR stands for Ready, Set, Resilient. So that is rsrcoaching.com. And RSR stands for Ready, Set, Resilient. John, they can email me at bencfreakley@gmail.com. Now here's a win-win. If you just email Ben Freakley without the C, you get my dad, a retired 3-star general. So if you get his email address and he emails you back, you get all sorts of great wisdom around military leadership.
I went online, I read about this man. And I didn't realize he was your dad.
Oh, he is a great man. He is leading today, Jerry and John. He is leading a group of Chick-fil-A executives on a tour of Gettysburg Battlefield. And
wow.
He does that quite a bit and approaches it from different vantage points of leadership. He is my hero in every sense.
So Ben C.
Freakley,
at
Gmail.
Yep.
At email? At
Gmail.
Perfect.
Yep. Awesome. We'll put all of that in the show notes. Ben, last word of advice for everyone listening today. What do you want to leave them with?
I'm going to go with Jerry's on just stay curious. Just really just that. Let's make that the last word.
I love it. Love it. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, my good friend, for being on the Way Champions podcast again. And I know this won't be your last visit on the podcast. This was an amazing conversation that just flew by. So, from Jerry and I and all our listeners, thank you so much.
Thank you all both so much for having me. I had a blast.
Well, Jerry, are you glad I invited you on that one?
Oh, John, this is I had no idea how much fun I would have with Ben. And although I heard his podcast before, but boy, it's just a kindred spirit through and through, you know, in all ways, whether it's content or philosophy or his why or just the profession that we share together. And it's so refreshing to see someone in my profession who's so genuine, authentic, vulnerable, open, receptive, caring, all those wonderful words that we teach, and to be part of that. Because it's very easy to see when you look out there, so many people are trying to, I don't blame them for wanting to make a living, but that's their whole emphasis, and they'll do anything they can to sell sports psychology, and it's not healthy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was wonderful. I
And Ben
really enjoyed
always,
it.
he always undersells himself, and it's been fun because him and
Yeah.
I were on this parallel journey, right? We were both college soccer assistant coaches at the same time and taking our licenses, and and then he went into the
Wow.
head coaching, and I got married and followed the youth side, but we've always remained friends and always remained close. And then it's funny how our lives have sort of come back together, reemerge in this team development work
Yeah,
that
it,
he
it was
does with
really
ready. Yeah.
one of my takeaways really is to see the connection and the caring, the deep caring that each of you have as well. I mean, I had my connection with him on a professional level, but to see both of you and the shared history and what have you, and it makes for a really lively, upbeat conversation,
Yeah.
one of filled with joy and happiness, and I don't throw those words around loosely. I mean, I could just feel it when I'm sitting here. It was hard for me to even think about what I wanted to say if I did when I was listening to all of that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was really great.
No, it was great. And I mean, again, I have so many notes every time I talk to Ben, and we didn't, just for all our listeners, we didn't prepare a single question for this podcast.
Yeah,
We just knew
this is a first.
that
Yeah,
it would flow because of how well I know Ben, and he's just got so many great ideas, and the way he says them that just makes them sticky. And so I hope everyone got a ton out of that one. Just a reminder before we sign off here. Don't forget to get those bulk book orders in for the champion teammate. We've been posting some of the pictures of the teams that used it during fall sports, and what a difference it made in their seasons. And yes, it's fun to see the ones posing with state championship banners and league championship trophies and plaques. But I think just more the coaches who wrote back, even if they didn't win it all, saying like, this was our best season ever. Like, what a
yeah,
difference,
yeah,
how much the kids enjoyed each other. So
yeah.
the
Yep.
book's a difference maker, and we'll get it for you at a discount. Just email me, John, JOHN at changingthegameproject.com, and we'll get those bulk orders out for you as quickly as possible. So
Wonderful. Yep.
awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Remember, your influence is never neutral. So go out there this week, make a big difference. Use some of these tools that you just learned from Ben, and we'll see you again next week.